2022, and it would help if I turn my mic on. There's a good start to the year, isn't it? So welcome, Happy New Year to everyone. And if I could start off first of all by taking apologies for absence from Leslie.
Yes, I've got apologies from Councillors Dunn, Scott, Swinburne and Taylor.
Thank you very much for that. We also have, there will be some new people coming onto the committee. One of them is present today, that's Councillor Anne Dale, who's here as an observer, but that notification will have to go through Council to approve. But welcome, Councillor Dale, to the meeting, and I'm sure you'll provide some very good input. So we have the agenda in front of us today, but first of all, I need to go through the minutes of the previous meeting, which are contained on pages 1 to 12 of your report today. So can I just check if anyone has any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? And I am not seeing anyone indicating, so with permission of the committee, I will sign them off as a true record. Okay, which I'll do at the end of the meeting. We now come on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the disclosure of members' interests. We have standing declarations which are available online to the public. Does anyone have any additional declarations they wish to declare on any matter on this morning's meeting? Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, I am a Ponteland Town Councillor who have made a comments on the Atkinson House stroke Ponteland School. I did not take part in any of the discussions. I did help set them up to get the town council well briefed, etc. So I'm not declaring any real interest, but I'm declaring an interest that I am a town councillor, but I did not take part.
Thank you very much for that, and that's duly noted. We now move on to the next item, item 4, which is forward plan of key decisions. This is usually just to note, and it is therefore information, and I'm not seeing anyone who wishes to comment on that. So on that basis, I will move on to the substantive part of this morning's agenda, and that is item number 5, and this is the outcome of consultation on the proposal to amalgamate Seton Sluice Middle School and Wichfig Middle School. These are contained on pages 19 to 64 of your report, and this report now is going to be taken by Sue Aberston. So, Sue, over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daly. Yes, the report sets out the outcomes of the informal consultation on a proposal to amalgamate Seton Sluice Middle School and Wichfig Middle School on the current site of Wichfig and Astley Community High School, or on an alternative site that's currently being developed as part of a business case to provide new buildings for the school. The consultation, as you will be aware, has arisen as a result of the request of the governing body of the Seton Valley Federation, following their identification of some significant educational and financial benefits for all the students within the Seton Valley Federation that could arise from the two middle schools amalgamating on one site, already in new buildings already planned, as I've already mentioned. So therefore, following Cabinet's approval and support from Facts Committee, an informal consultation commenced on the 13th of October and ran until the 1st of December, which follows the statutory DFE guidance of a 6-week informal consultation that took place during term time. The consultation document that included a questionnaire was drawn up, which was sent out with the rationale, background information and the implications of the proposal. This document was circulated directly to parents, staff, governors and other stakeholders, as demonstrated in the consultation register that is contained at Appendices 2 of the report. The document was also published on the Council's website, on Twitter and Facebook, and on notices highlighting the consultation was also displayed in local libraries at Seton Sluice and Seton Delaval, and a copy of the questions are contained again in paragraph 13 of the report. As you'll be aware, when we submitted the request to consult, we had hoped to carry out a public event, as we normally would do in informal consultation, that would have taken place in the Seaton Sluice area. However, as a result of the rise in COVID cases, it was felt that it would not be possible to maintain the safety of council staff and the public across the course of a public event day. Therefore, a consultation Padlet, a dedicated area on the council's website, was developed, which held the consultation document. We also developed a number of frequently asked questions that arose from consultees during the consultation period. The Padlet also included animations to provide useful interface between consultees and officers, where it was possible to answer questions arising from the consultees in a more interactive way. Therefore, we felt that this was a useful substitute for the public-facing event, given the circumstances that we found ourselves in. The Padlet itself was accessed 285 times during the consultation, and the link from there to the consultation document was also used 276 times. So again, we feel that it was a useful tool to use in the event of not being able to meet face-to-face. We did, however, hold virtual meetings, and they did take place with Seaton Sluice Middle School staff, their trade union representatives and their HR advisor. We also met with Wichfig Middle School staff and Astley High School staff and their trade union representatives as well. We also met with the governing body of the Seaton Valley Federation, and at the invitation of the Seaton Valley Community Council, we also attended a meeting from them. And all of those meetings are summarised in paragraph 25, some of the notes from those meetings. Again, as set out in paragraph 24 of the report, members are reminded that the purpose of the Council's questionnaire was to seek the views of consultees in a qualitative way in order to inform the decision-making process of the Council's Cabinet, and it was not intended that the results are used as a referendum on the proposal. The report also informs you that we also sent information to over 3,500 consultees. They were sent the link to the consultation document and questionnaire directly, and of those 3,500 we received 726 responses were given to the consultation feedback. This, however, did not include the students of the Seaton Valley Federation, as the school themselves, which is standard practice in these circumstances, developed their own questionnaire in a more child-friendly way in order to seek the views of the young people that attend the schools affected. A breakdown of the number of responses received seeking views on whether respondents supported the proposal is also provided in the table in paragraph 24 of the report, together with the main reasons given for supporting the proposal, as well as the main reasons for those not supporting the proposal. So the consultees in support of the proposal appear to echo the views of the Seaton Valley Federation in relation to the perceived benefits of the proposal, which include social and academic benefits, fit-for-purpose new buildings, financial benefits of economies of scale, improving transition for pupils, and the sharing of expertise across both the middle and high schools. Consultees opposed to the proposal were concerned about the proposed size of the middle school, the increased distance for some pupils that would have to travel, younger children mixing with older children, concerns around traffic, parking issues, and predominantly the loss of a community school within the Seaton Valley community. The governing body of Seaton Valley Federation still support the proposal to amalgamate the two schools and are of very firm belief that is the best educational offer available. And a more detailed summary of their response is also contained in paragraph 15 of the report. We also received feedback, but only from two of the first schools in the partnership that responded to the consultation, and their responses are in summary of their responses are contained in paragraph 16 and 17. The response was mixed, with one school tentatively supporting, but they had a number of key questions, and the other school was unable to support the proposal through the lack of engagement with the Seaton Valley Federation with its feeder first schools. We also, as I've mentioned, met with the Seaton Valley Community Council, and we've received their response again, which is contained in paragraph 28. But their preferred option is to retain the middle school in Seaton Sluice, and for Northumberland County Council to invest in the existing buildings and site to address the concerns that have been expressed about the viability of the school when the new buildings are provided for Astley and Wichfig. The reasons why the building of Seaton Sluice does not feature close to the top of the list of the Council's priorities of those schools most in need of refurbishment is also set out in paragraph 28. Seaton Valley Community Council also expressed the views that they were unable to fully consider the proposal without knowing exactly where a new school site was likely to be built. Elected members, Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Scott, also did not support the proposal, and a summary of their response is contained in paragraph 19 of the report. And the local MP, Ian Levy, is also opposed to the proposal, and a summary of his response is also contained in paragraph 21 of the report. In terms of the students themselves, we received 18 students' responses to the online consultation, and in addition, in response to the school's questionnaire, a further 533 students responded to that questionnaire. Again, the breakdown of the students' responses are contained in paragraph 23. From the responses received from the Federation's questionnaire, the students at the schools, while there does not appear to be a large number in favour of the amalgamation, does appear to be a large number in favour of the amalgamation, there is less support for all students being together on one site. And around 185 consultees also suggested alternative models to the consultation, and these have been summarised into 3 themes contained in paragraph 26 of the report. Again, just to reiterate, while it is stressed that consultation of this nature are based on qualitative rather than quantitative feedback, there must be a significant body of support, even if not the majority of support, across the range of stakeholders, including professionals, for the proposals such as these to be successfully implemented. The lack of express support for this proposal across both the professional, public and political sectors give rise to concern, and the proposal would not be effectively delivered and would be difficult to implement, and would therefore not achieve the improved educational outcomes on which the original consultation was initiated, but may conversely impact negatively on the students of the Seaton Valley Federation, and as a result of this the division that this could create. Therefore, we are recommending to Cabinet that we do not move forward with the publication of a statutory proposal to amalgamate Seaton Sluice Middle School and Wichfig Middle School in shared buildings on the Astley site, and therefore proceed with no further proposal at this stage. It should also be noted at the same time that the recommendation does not impact on the business case that is being developed, but should continue based on a reduced scope of providing replacement buildings and associated playing fields, sports facilities to accommodate Astley High School and Wichfig Middle School. The work for completing the business case should progress along the original timeline with a target date of April 22 for final approval by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. That's very clear and comprehensive. Do I have anyone who wishes to comment on the report? Guy Renner-Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the decision for the final decision on this will be made at Cabinet, so I'm just here to listen to the views of the Facts Committee. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those who took part in the consultation. It's an important step in our multi-million-pound school rebuild at Astley. One of many of our school builds that we've either completed or already progressing. So I welcome this report, and we'll see what the decision is made at Cabinet.
Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to say that I'm delighted with this report and the outcome of it, because we really need to ensure that we keep schools and communities and children aren't travelling miles for an education, and we're making schools bigger and bigger to save money and almost producing children factories. So I really am over the moon that the result of this report, and I hope that Cabinet do continue with this. And obviously I would love to make sure that we see the investment that was planned in Seaton Sluice Middle School continued, and does the good outcomes that we've seen previously from that school continue going forward and support schools in smaller communities? Thank you.
I've got Councillor Carr.
Thanks, Chair. I also echo the comments made by the two councillors as well. Thank you for the report. It's really detailed. I'd like to turn everyone's attention to page 29 at the bottom. Do you support the proposal to amalgamate Seton Sluice Middle and Wichfig Middle Schools on a shared site with Astley High School? The entire report can be summed up in this response. Yes, 16.94%. No, 83.06%. It's not wanted. On the next page, page 30, if you look at the against proposed amalgamations bullet point, children as young as 9 years old mixing with 18-year-olds. No. Impact on an already congested site by increased traffic and parking. If you've ever been at Astley High School in the morning and you see the absolute traffic chaos on that road itself, an amalgamation of these two schools on a new site, we don't have the grounds, I believe, to even implement this, Chair. We're not America. This is the UK. We have a small roads. We don't have the capacity for these kind of traffic implications that it will bring. Thank you.
So I've got Kath McAvoy-Carr, Executive Director of Adult and Children's Services, who wishes to speak, and then I've got Trevor Thorne and then Councillor Dunbar.
Thanks, Chair. Just in relation to some of the comments that Councillor Carr was making there, I think it just wanted to reiterate that is the purpose of the consultation process, is to ensure that everybody has their views in relation to that. And I think the outcome of the consultation has indicated that there isn't a strength of feeling in relation to those three schools amalgamating. I think there is no doubt that we are in a position where Astley needs to be rebuilt and Wichfig alongside of that. So that's the next point of the consultation will be to look at the proposals in relation to that moving forward. So just wanted to reaffirm that.
Thank you. Dan, if you could switch your microphone off as well, please. Right, Trevor Thorne.
Yep. Well, Chair, you know, was a great opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity missed. A great investment was promised across the, you know, what were three schools. And yes, you know, I totally get it. Nobody wants to lose a school, but I think, you know, here we would have had a school offering great opportunity to all the Seton Valley children. So, yes, you know, I'm listening to the response like all the other members on this committee, but I'm very disappointed, you know, at the response and the fact that this might fall. But, you know, I'm listening to the people as well, and that's the most important thing. But I do think it's a mistake.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo some of the comments that have been made. I think this is a very comprehensive consultation. It's been completed with the COVID restrictions, and I think you've done a really good job getting the views from everybody that needed to have their say. I agree and approve of the recommendations in the report. Just something I would like to add, though, that I think the building refurbishment and repairs to Seton Sluice Middle School should be looked into and completed in some kind of timely manner. I know they're not high on the list, but I think that would sort of resolve all of the other issues regarding this.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments? Or Officer Sue Harbison, if you'd like to come in on some of those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Yes, just in response to that, I think you'll see in the report the funding that we've already invested in Seton Sluice Middle School. I think just over £400,000, I think it was up until that point, and we've got further investment planned for the next 12 months with the replacement of a dilapidated mobile classroom as well. So that was already planned, and that work will continue. In the summer, again, we've been spending money, so as and when things are needed to be invested, needed, that's exactly what we'll do. But as Kath has already mentioned, our priority is very much for Astley and for Wichfig. We haven't got a school in anywhere near a poorer condition as those two schools across the whole of our 166 schools at the moment. So therefore that is an absolute priority for us to be focused on completing the business case and getting that school replaced as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I think Councillor Dodd wanted to come in with a comment.
Yeah, a long time ago I was chairman of FACS, and we visited this area and Astley when the then county councillor said, you know, that we need to do something, and we visited the school. I'm going back a long time, and you know, the steel windows or metal windows. There were so many things that was. We have to start, you know, take it to the ground and start up again. And, you know, here we are a long time later and nothing's happened. I would hate to think that this now becomes a football. We all know that a handful of people, and the figures do not indicate a handful of people, but anything that is proposed becomes a football. Oh, you can't do that, let's get a petition, let's get people become polarised in these things. What we have got to do is make sure that whatever's allocated in a budget remains there, and we have to, our officers and councillors have to come back and say, here's a different plan. We've listened. We want to move forward, but I always fear that things become polarised with technology. So I would like to think that we start with a clean slate and say this is what we think this time. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. On that point, Richard, I know when I was Deputy Leader with responsibility for Children's Services, it was put into the medium-term financial plan a multi-million-pound commitment to the site. That still remains, and obviously that is obviously going to be improved given what will now be 2 schools, 1 site, rather than 3 schools, 1 site. Okay, so I'm not seeing anybody else who wishes to speak. The action from us today is to put our comments to Cabinet, which will be hearing those comments on the 11th of January. I think the overwhelming consensus is that we approve the report and we endorse it. We'll make a note of Councillor Thorne's concerns as well and pass those on to Cabinet. So with your agreement, that will be the line that we will be presenting to Cabinet on the 11th of January. I'm not seeing any dissent, so that's great. We'll move with that one. So thank you very much for all the hard work which has gone in by officers and members of the public to come up with that conclusion. Right, we're now moving on the agenda to item number 6, which is the outcome of the consultation on the proposals for Atkinson House. Sue, over to you as well.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Daly. Yes, the report sets out some further responses to informal consultation, but this time on the relocation of Atkinson House Special School to the former Richard Coates primary school site in Ponteland, and to change the designation of the school for the school to become co-educational. The consultation has arisen as a result of the need to provide additional places for young people, including girls in Northumberland, with social, emotional, and mental health needs for September 2022, as a result of a steady upward trend in demand for special school places in the county and nationally over the last 10 years. Cabinet has permitted public informal consultation in line with the requirements of the school organisation regulations, and therefore this report sets out the feedback from that informal consultation. So on the 12th of October, Cabinet approved the initiation of the informal consultation on the proposal to relocate Atkinson House. The consultation was approved as a result of a rationale for the needs to create more SEMH places for children and for young people within Northumberland to ensure their needs are met as close to their home communities as possible. 6 weeks of consultation began on the 13th of October and closed on the 1st of December, and again all during term time. And the feedback from the consultation is summarised in paragraphs 16 to 27 of your report. The informal consultation again was carried out in lines with the requirements laid down in the school organisation guidance. A consultation, including a questionnaire, was drawn up which set out the rationale, background information and implications of the proposal. This document was circulated directly to parents, staff, governors and other stakeholders as demonstrated in the consultation register contained at Appendices 2 of the report. The document was also published on the Council's website, on Twitter, Facebook, and notices highlighting the consultation were displayed in the local library at Ponteland, and a copy of the questionnaire is also contained in paragraph 14 of your report. As with the Seaton Valley Federation consultation, we had hoped to also have a public event to take place in Ponteland. However, during the consultation period, the COVID cases were at such a height, we felt that it wasn't possible to maintain the safety again of council staff and public across the course of a public event day. Particularly in Ponteland, we really struggled to find a COVID-safe environment to hold the event. As with the previous proposal, we also developed a Padlet for the Atkinson House consultation, which held the consultation document. Again, we developed specific frequently asked questions that had arisen from the consultees during the consultation period. The Padlet again also included animations, provide useful interface between the consultees and officers, where it was possible to answer questions arising from the consultees, and therefore we felt that this was a useful substitute for a public-facing event. The Padlet itself was accessed 97 times during the consultation, and the link from there to the consultation document was also used 189 times. So therefore probably not as many as the previous consultation. Again, we were able to hold virtual meetings that did take place with Ponteland Town Council, and we met with the Town Council on 2 occasions. We also met with Atkinson House governing body. We met with Atkinson House staff and their trade union representatives, and they were also supported by their HR advisor. And we also met with Little Tinklers nursery manager who also shares the site, and a summary of these meetings are provided in paragraph 25 of the report. There were also information meetings held virtually and in person with the Peel Trust representatives, our local elected members and local governing body of the neighbouring Richard Coates Primary School, where specific safeguarding concerns were discussed, as well as the impact on traffic and the timing of the school day, in order for Peel Trust to understand the operational impact of the proposal. As set out in paragraph 24 of the report, members are also reminded that the purpose of the Council's questionnaire was to seek the views of consultees on a qualitative basis in order to inform the decision-making process of the Council's Cabinet, and it's not the intention that the results are used as a referendum for this proposal. We sent out the consultation link to the consultation document to just over 2,000 people, and the question, while there were 305 responses were received via the consultation document, around 40 of these were the parents of the students at Atkinson House, and they were all in support of the proposal. The breakdown of the number of responses against questions 1 and 2, that then the main body of the questions, whether you support the proposal, and the change in designation for the school to allow girls to attend, is provided in paragraph 24 of your report, together with the main reasons giving support for the proposal and the reasons against. The reasons given by consultees who express support for the proposal are in line with the rationale put forward by the Council as part of the consultation. It is, however, understandable that parents, the staff of Richard Coates and Little Tinklers, the nursery adjacent on site, and local residents may have concerns that young people in an older age range group would be in an adjacent building to the site on Richard Coates Primary School and Little Tinklers Nursery. These concerns could be generally expressed as safeguarding issues, and similar concerns were raised by parents during the consultation in Ponteland when we did the reorganisation from 3-tier to 2-tier, particularly in relation to how the shared site of Ponteland High School and Ponteland Primary would work together. So any remodelling work of the former Richard Coates site would include the appropriate modifications to ensure that the building and site would be secure, and as is the case across all shared school sites across Northumberland. And a full response to the concerns raised are also contained in paragraph 24 of the report. Atkinson House, the feedback directly from those affected by the proposal. So Atkinson House School Governing Body agreed in principle to support the transfer and the change to become co-educational school. And the summary of their response again is contained in paragraph 16, together with the responses and the questions that were raised by the governing body. The staff at Atkinson House Special School generally welcome the proposal to move to Ponteland and the consideration for co-education. Their reasons relate to the opportunity to create a building that is more fit for purpose and can offer additional places, and that no current specific provision for girls in Northumberland with SEMH exists. Staff also submitted a number of questions, and these were responded to in their response in paragraph 17 of the report. The feedback from Peel Trust supports the needs for children, additional children with SEMH provision within Northumberland. It has concerns, however, around the decision to co-locate Atkinson House alongside a primary school, which they feel wholly inappropriate, and the proposal is based on an opportunity to use a vacant building rather than sound reasons. The Trust also submitted 4 questions which are contained in paragraph 18, together with the responses to the points raised, and NCC officers and the head teacher of Atkinson House School remain committed, as previously discussed at the outset of informal consultation, to work with the Peel Trust and the diocese to ensure suitable safeguarding measures are put in place to ensure all children and young people are safeguarded, as is the case across many of our shared sites in Northumberland, such as Josephine Butler campus in Ashington, where we have a special school co-located with a primary school and a secondary school. Ponteland Town Council have also expressed several concerns with the proposal due to the sharing of the site with the primary school and the private nursery, and these again are contained in paragraph 19 of the report, together with the responses to each of the 7 points that they have raised. The diocese also recognised the rapidly growing need for provision of the specialist education need in Northumberland, and would be supportive of the right provision in the most suitable location. However, they did raise the same concerns over the proposed shared site, and whilst in principle they did not object to the proposal of relocation, provided there were sufficient adaptations and investment in the site to ensure adequate security and protection for neighbouring provisions. The staff in Atkinson House have also initiated discussions with students on the proposal for the relocation and the change in their designation of the school. The majority of the children were excited about moving to a new building, which was a school and not a house, in their words. A summary of their feedback, including their concerns about the proposal, are also contained in paragraph 23. Alternative models were also suggested during consultation, and they've been summarised into 6 themes, again contained in paragraph 26 of your report. So the implications, the timeline for implementation of the relocation of the school would be for September 2022. The staffing implications on the relocation and increase on school places is set out again in paragraph 29. Transport implications are set out in paragraph 30, but should be noted that there will be an increased home to transport cost in the region of £122,000. However, it should also be noted that alternative to relocation would be to commission more out-of-county places, which on average would cost an additional £10,000 per place, more than educating children in Northumberland. An additional funding has already been earmarked to increase the SEN transport budget for the next financial year. There are also implications for buildings. So during the informal consultation period, work has been undertaken to determine the scope of works required for the relocation of Atkinson House Special School. High-level suitability and capacity studies have been completed in order to provide a cost element on any of the refurbishment, remodelling works required to meet the needs of the student on the roll of Atkinson House. And it is estimated that capital works required to undertake the relocation will be in the region of £2.5 million. It is also worth noting that the project/building costs are estimated, and these should be treated as draft, as they are subject to more detailed work should approval to implement be approved. So in order to work up some firmer costs and proposals prior to the Cabinet approval, we are also asking to spend £250,000 at risk on detailed design and development work. It is also worth noting in relation to the buildings that Richard Coates buildings and associated land form part of a church supplemental agreement with the Richard Coates C of E Primary School and are currently under lease to the Peel Trust. The building and land are in the process of being transferred back to the local authority following Richard Coates' move into the adjacent Ponteland Primary School, but that work is still currently waiting a DFE decision in order to complete that task. So in conclusion, as with most consultations involving proposals such as these for schools, this informal consultation has been informative and emotive. It was expected that the proposal would attract strong views from some quarters, and most of the concerns and questions aired by consultees have been fair and understandable. However, Cabinet and also FACTS members should note that this consultation attracted a number of offensive comments towards this vulnerable group of young people in the county. And therefore, admittedly, these have only been submitted by a small number of consultees, but it should also be noted that we've removed these from the consultation register as we didn't feel it was appropriate to publish them. As stated, the concerns around safeguarding raised by many consultees during consultation are real and valid. Should the proposal to relocate Atkinson House to the former Richard Coates building be approved, it's suggested that representatives from the three settings would be located adjacent to one another at Thornhill Road in Ponteland are involved, where appropriate, in developing the most suitable arrangements for safeguarding, and that this collaborative work continues for the benefit of children and young people receiving care and education on the site at Ponteland. Therefore, given the issues raised in objection to the proposal can be addressed through changes in operation, through investment in the site, and the support given for the proposal from the governing body and staff of Atkinson House Special School and the majority of its parents, we are recommending that Cabinet approve the relocation of the school to the site in Thornhill Road in Ponteland with effect from September 2022, together with a change in designation, and therefore recommending that we move forward to statutory consultation on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Before I open it up for discussion, I want to bring in Councillor Runner Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm looking forward to hearing the views of FACTS on this report, and I would once again like to thank all those that took part in the consultation. As the committee is aware, we have an increasing need for school spaces for those with social, emotional and mental health needs. And this is one of the ways that we're trying to help that. I would also take the opportunity to echo the comments from Sue in that some of the responses to this consultation were absolutely deplorable, covering stereotypes about children with these particular needs. Those attitudes should no longer exist in the 21st century. I would happily have published them with their names on so that they would be named and shamed, but we're not allowed to do that, unfortunately. So my ears are open, looking forward to hearing what the FACTS Committee says about this report.
So before I open it up for questions, I am aware that Paul Rickard, who's Director of Education at the Diocese, does want to speak. I would reference the fact that on page 77, there is a response from the diocese, but I understand that a subsequent letter was also sent to the authority on the 30th of December, Paul. So I'm happy for you to put your views, which we'll note, and we can obviously pick up any of the questions or concerns that you have. Is that all right?
Thank you, Chair. That's perfect. I would like to welcome the report. It's been very useful, and also point out that we too find abhorrent the fact that people make such comments in response to a consultation. It's completely unacceptable. If I could just draw members to page 77 to the commentary aspect of our response from the diocese, which raised some concerns, I'm afraid, from the Board of Education. It says, as the diocese has 2 membership positions on the Peel Trust governance structure, it is perhaps not surprising that the NDEB would support the position of the Trust and its opposition to the relocation of Atkinson House Special School. I just need to make clear, the NDEB positions, membership positions, are filled by 2 nominated individuals, one of whom is an officer who does not have a vote on such statements or comments that come back to the board, and the other is a professor from the University of Sunderland who declared an interest at the time of discussion of this report. The NDEB itself is an incorporated charitable company and acts in support of the Church of England schools and also the education of all children in the Diocese of Newcastle. There are 57 church schools in the Newcastle Diocesan area, and we also have membership of 3 other multi-academy trusts. And whilst we always look to support the interests of Church of England schools generally, this is always done with a consideration of the wider educational and community interests in line with the charitable objects of the NDEB and its statutory charitable purposes under the measure. To suggest the NDEB would implicitly be biased in supporting a trust above the wider charitable objects of the NDEB to promote and support the education across the diocesan area is openly disparaging to the NDEB and skilled trustees who volunteer their time to this role. Indeed, the board has opposed consultations by trusts in the past, of which it has membership's interests. And we are concerned that the above paragraph of the report directly suggests the NDEB is improperly influenced as a result of its membership links to the trusts, when this is simply not and cannot be the case. The NDEB is made up of a range of skilled trustees, skilled individuals, and comprise both elected synod members and members appointed by the Bishop of Newcastle. These trustees considered this proposal very carefully in light of various educational, moral and safeguarding aspects involved. The NDEB did not see the response from the Peel Trust before preparing its response. It did not state it was supporting the Peel Trust's objections, and in fact the NDEB did not object to the proposal in principle. It was simply made clear, which is entirely reasonable, that the safeguarding issues, including those affected by a neighbouring Church of England primary school, needed to be firmly addressed prior to any delivery on the specified site. Reverend Dr. Jill Alexander, as chair of the NDEB, is personally offended by this suggestion of bias and would respectfully request this section of the report is removed as soon as possible and an apology issued to the NDEB to avoid any further misrepresentation or suggestion of bias on the part of the board. Thank you.
And just for the benefit of anybody watching, the shorthand NDBE stands for the Newcastle Diocesan Board of Education.
Education Board,
yes. That's right, yeah. So shorthand, the Education Board. Does any officer want to comment on Paul's comment, or do we want to pick that up later? Sue Avison.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Daly. Yeah, and apologies to Paul and the diocese for our interpretation of the responses received. By the time we received the diocese comments, it was too late to retract the commentary that had actually been written. But we'll make that clear when it comes to the cabinet decision. And I think you'll understand in the presentation that I gave that it was clear that it wasn't an objection, that it was concerns raised by the diocese.
I think that possibly answers most of your points, Paul. Is that right?
It does. We have other points to make during the discussion, but that's thank you and thanks to Sue.
Okay,
and the team.
if only everything in life was as simple as this. Wonderful. Right. Any other comments from anyone? Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody watching in or realising is that this is a scrutiny committee where we look in detail, or hopefully detail, at what is being proposed and where we can make some influence. And yes, this is bang in the middle of my patch. So there are a number of concerns of what I'd call day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, you know, and always, whatever happens, whatever changes come, something always pops up that nobody saw. Now then, there was 1 or 2 campaigners about the traffic when it was like a proper school. That's largely obviously disappeared. But I know there have been concerns about the traffic on this road. It is a 20-mile-an-hour road, like everywhere with a school. But I don't envisage if it's always going to be taxied in, taxied out. I just hope that you have enough space for whatever the number of taxis to come in, etc. You know, I don't want to see lines of taxis up the side of a road on a busy period. I mean, that's one little item, the parking and the taxi rank, or whatever you want to call it, drop off. I would like the detail of when that comes through, where we could actually say, oh, you know, I have a card that says that's not quite enough, can we think it out again? The other one that concerns a lot of people is the security. The shared playing field, I don't know the minor detail of how that's going to work, but you know, we have had issues. I'm not talking about large fences or anything like that, because at the end of the day, these are children with educational needs and not to be locked away and forgotten about. These are people, you know, who have a right to education. And I was part of the executive, as was Councillor Daly, who was in head of education, where we, at the start of 2017, set out the stall because money was going out of this county, expertise, investment, everything was going out of this county for children to go to other places. And we made the decision to invest in this county. So I cannot turn tail and say we can't have this. Ponteland as a place has had some wonderful investment, including the school next door, which I was influential in. It was Ponteland North School, North Road School, and it was in a dire condition. We managed to get that on a sort of a land swap. Now then, here we are. Further down, we've got a brand new school at Darras Hall, and we've got a brand new campus. Because a lot of people had been resigned to that. This was going to be a block of flats. Again, that would have been overlooking the school, which would have caused other problems. So it is a school. The building is relatively in healthy order. It just needs a lick of paint and some redesign. I would like to think that that is thorough. And I will be watching this like a hawk as it moves closer or it doesn't. But there is always going to be someone who kicks up a fuss, and I understand that fuss. But again, I reiterate, I want to seek assurances on the security, to drop off the playing fields, because this is an investment in Ponteland with expertise. You know, 80 pupils or 75 pupils. I want to make sure it's right. I'm trapped here because some people will say in favour. This is not the decision-making committee. This is the committee that can add influence to any decision. I do have an example of a councillor whose grandchild had to go to a similar school after their mother had died because they went off the rails a bit. And that put them in the right direction. They got 5 JSEs. So I think, you know, we do have a need. We cannot ignore and close the door on all of this. But at the start, we have to get everything right. Otherwise, fingers will be pointed and it'll be this, it'll be our fault. So I will be watching this like a hawk and hope that the improvements that are proposed do come and are not diluted. In fact, I'd rather say strengthened. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So before bringing in an officer to respond to that, I think it's worthwhile remembering that what we're doing here is we're scrutinising the results of the informal consultation with a recommendation to Cabinet to move to either, or recommendation either to move to a formal consultation or not, as the case may be. But at this stage, this is the informal consultation, and I think a lot of the concerns that you have will be picked up in the more formal, nuanced consultation going forward. But I think if Sue want to come in, and I do have some speakers who've indicated, so they are in this order: Councillor Ball, Councillor Dunbar, and then I've also got Paul Rickard, who also wants to come in as well. So if I bring Sue in first to respond to Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Yes, I think as I said in the report that we would look to bring everybody together to develop the most appropriate design solutions to meet the needs of all the users actually using the site. And that is why, again, the recommendation in the report is asking to spend a sum of money at risk in order that we can fully engage the professionals to develop the most appropriate design, therefore firming up a budget that will then come back through Cabinet should we move forward through formal consultation. And therefore that, again, lots of caveats are put under the £2.5 million, because that's been a desktop exercise being carried out. But we obviously need to get, you know, more professional people on board to develop the design and to do some more surveys to fully understand what needs to happen at the building to satisfy everybody's needs and to make sure that the children of all ages are safeguarded on the site. So yes, it is of paramount importance. And I'd just like to add as well, you know, as I said about Ponteland, that we did have all of those concerns, and Councillor Dodd will probably have been in the room on many occasions when those were expressed by the Ponteland community. But the school has been operational now for 12 months, and I spoke to the head previously to this meeting, and there hasn't been one safeguarding matter or concern raised by anybody in that co-location. Again, Josephine Butler, I've never been aware of a safeguarding matter there. Again, being developed through the designs that we undertake as part of our day-to-day work, and I'm sure this proposal won't be any different to what we've done previously.
Thank you, Sue. So if I move to Councillor Ball now, please.
Thank you. Right, so as much as I fully support moving people from a house to a school with better education, like facilities, I really have concerns about moving them so far, adding to the upset, the transport, the to and fro, and especially how many of these people will then be changing schools again a year later to go to the Gilbert ward. Obviously, we have the extra costs of the 122,000 per year. That is an ongoing cost as well. That's not being invested within education. And I just really think we need, I know that these young people are really keen to move to a school rather than a house. But is this the right option for them? And I just think added with the extra concerns that have been raised within the report, I really have issues with some of the things within here, and I really question if adding the distance and everything else is actually the best thing for the young people, especially if they're going to be moved twice over the course of the next 2 years. Thank you.
Yeah, just to confirm, the children won't move twice. When Gilbert Ward is established, hopefully a year in September, that'll be a whole new cohort. We wouldn't be removing children unless the parents or the children themselves want to relocate and to an alternative school. So that definitely wouldn't be our proposal. And again, in terms of transport, while currently, obviously, Gilbert Ward will be based in Blythe in the southeast, and we understand that the children currently on the roll of Atkinson House will need to travel in the short term further. The catchment area and the draw for Atkinson House is likely to change in the future as it has been relocated in Ponteland, which is a lot more central location for children in Northumberland. Therefore, it's we felt that it was the right location. We've got no provision, I think, as I previously said to committee, in the west of Northumberland, and therefore it would make travel distances for some children. I think we've got children in the far west of our county currently travelling to Atkinson House, so it will obviously make their journey shorter as well. So I think that's just the response. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that address your initial concern?
The thing is, I'm fully supportive of the school actually opening, but it's the concern of these people that are having to travel such a distance, especially if there's going to be one closer opening in 12 months' time.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dunbar and then Paul Rickard.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this initiative. I support the proposal. I think it's really going to be good for the young people of Northumberland. And after all, this is what it's all about, changing the lives for the better for the young people in Northumberland with special education needs. And I do fully support the co-ed part of it. And when I read this report this morning, I was touched by this one sentence, and I want to repeat it because I think we all should be aware of this. It was from parents of some of the children. I'm looking emotional. I'm really soft. I'm really softy. Some parents in particular stated that introduction of the provision of girls at the school would be more representative for the world into which they will enter, and so help them to make them good citizens. And I'm sorry for I'm such a softie, aren't I? Oh God, I was terrible on the foster panel as well. So yes, that sentence sums up for me. All the other things about the taxis and the road traffic and whatever, that's immaterial. What we are doing here is doing something fantastic for the young people of Northumberland. And I know one of my residents, she's too old now, a young girl, would have benefited for this, and didn't have the facility in Northumberland, and she had to go somewhere in North Tyneside, which wasn't suitable for her. This is a fantastic opportunity, and I'd like to thank you, Ian, for pushing this forward in the past, you know, when you had your position, and I think you're doing a fantastic Guy. But yes, I think this is what it's all about, and I fully support this initiative. Thank you, and I'm going to stop crying now.
Thank you, Christine. Paul Rickard.
Thank you, Chair. I guess a couple of questions about the investment. We welcome the overall £250,000 to look at how this can work. So I guess my question would be, how does that actually fit into the timeline for this, so that people can have that understanding of how will this actually look if it's going out to statutory consultation? Because if we're talking about a target date of September 2022, that's not a lot of time during COVID, when we're struggling to get Velux windows for schools at the minute from our experience, let alone anything else, how this could really kind of take place in that time scale. And I also do have a slight concern at the references to co-location of sites, because those examples that are being given are between primary schools and secondary schools with regards to age of children, as opposed to the actual needs of children. So I think we just need to be careful about, if we're going to use as an example, for example, Josephine Butler in Ashington, and the needs of the children on that site, I believe, unless I'm wrong, are going to be in the main slightly different to the needs of the children who could be at Richard Coates. So I come back to, again, in principle, I think this is a good thing to do. And if we can achieve what we want to achieve on the site, of making it the right conditions for the children so they have a better life chance, that is absolutely the right thing to do. It's just, how does all of this fit into a timeline of a study that's got to show this, a consultation with leaders and the local schools, nurseries, then do £2.5 million with potentially of building work, plus everything else that you find when you open the building, the asbestos, goodness knows what else. September, would all of this be in place really by September 2022? Or is that a bit of a challenge that we're really setting ourselves up to fail on?
Let's bring in the expert. Sue.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, it will be a challenge, Paul. There's no two ways about it. Without COVID, it will be a challenge. But what we've already been doing in the background is we've already appointed through procurement a contractor that's sitting there waiting to go. We've got a design team sitting waiting to go. So the minute that, if Cabinet do approve on Tuesday, there could potentially be a meeting the following day. So we've actually got everything in place in order to carry out the design work that we need to do during the formal consultation, therefore firming up the budget when the next report comes through for work to actually start.
But I think that's, as you've just said, that's during that consultation.
Yep.
And I think what people are saying is they'd like to understand, so they can say what they think in that consultation, how these risks will be mitigated. So as such, that feels like the timeline's out of sequence. If that work can be done before the consultation, so people can be reassured, will we not have a better consultation, because people will be able to see, this is how it will work with the taxis, with the roads, this is how the field will be set up, this is how we can set up the building, so it all works. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm making myself clear or not, but I'm just concerned that it then feels like two things running concurrently, which isn't going to help a consultation.
Which is the way, sorry Paul, that's the way that we always do things, that work is going on in the background to firm up the issues. What you've got here is a commitment to address the concerns that have been raised during consultation. We're proposing to do that together in terms of the site users, and therefore meetings will continue, will happen, will be part of that process during that consultation, and that will be fed back to Cabinet if it approves formal consultation. It's not anything different to what we haven't done in the past.
But if that investment is going to then give reassurance to people that it's actually going to be a better facility that's going to work really well, I almost feel that bit of work should be done before a formal consultation. So therefore, in the frequently asked questions, you're saying to people, well, actually, we've looked at this and this is how we'd deal with this. We've looked at that, this is how we'd sort that issue out. Just particularly with the site that we're talking about.
I mean, my question before I bring Kath McAvoy in is, if we did that, how much of a delay is that going to put on this? Because the imperative is to get this done, but to get it right, not rushed.
Yeah.
So if I can bring you Sue in, then bring Kath McAvoy in, please.
I suppose it depends probably. Probably about 6 weeks worth of delay, potentially, while some design work is completed. The team know it's a challenge, but they feel that they can deliver it. They're the professionals after all. You know, I'll repeat their words. They know what they know what they're doing, and they believe it's a challenge that they can meet. They're very keen to start the work. The other thing that I'd say, that obviously formal consultation is about, this is our proposal, this is what we're going to do, and therefore it's a case of supporting or objecting. There isn't the frequently asked questions, there isn't the public meetings. What we're saying is there is concerns from those users co-located, and therefore we want to work with you during that period of time to address the specific concerns of those most implicated in the proposals, and that's what we're proposing moving forward.
So all I was going to do really was repeat what Sue tells me on a regular basis. When new information or new things happen, we will ensure that that there is an update to those who are part of that consultation, to ensure that that information is shared. So if during the process of the co-located, I was going to say the consecutive work that's ongoing around the consultation and the proposals, we can share those to say that this is, you know, this would be our intention. This is how we'll mitigate against those particular issues or those particular risks. And I think if we do that in public, you know, then that gives our commitment to do that. I understand what you're saying, Paul. You're saying that actually, if people can be seen that those issues have been addressed already, then that might make the consultation a bit more positive. But equally, we're not in a position to be able to put all of that right, because we need to make sure that eventually that we are going to be able to go down this road, because we might do all that work and then that might not be the path that is taken. So I think it's about the risks of both So. Any new information that comes out as a result of the designs or as a result of the issues that are shared, we should be able to share those more openly.
Sorry, Wayne, I do, because I just feel, having listened to the concerns of our board, for example, which have said, in principle, if they can see that reassurance, they would actively support this. And I suspect there will be other groups who, if they can see that for the sake of this 6-week period, could then actively support. It then means a consultation is surely much stronger, with an outcome that everyone wants for the right thing for children. I guess that's where I keep coming back to, but I accept what you say, Sue, and Kath, and welcome it, and I'm grateful for that. I don't want to labour the point anymore. It was just to be clear, does that not help? But
I think the line that I would take on this is, a summary of our discussion will go to Cabinet for the 11th. Guy sitting here, and you'll be speaking to the paper in Cabinet. I think what we can capture in our summary is the point that you've made, and that can be addressed to Cabinet members on the 11th. But your point is noted. Duly noted. Any other comment? Reverend Lennox, please.
On page 95 of the report, it mentions that over the last 10 years in Northumberland, the number of children and young people being identified with autism has increased significantly. And I know that we've mentioned this in previous meetings, that it's probably due in some ways to the increasing awareness of autism. But is this trend continuing? Are we seeing an even bigger rate of growth? And are we planning with that in mind?
I think the answer is yes, but I'm going to bring in Audrey King and we'll give you the technical background to that word.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Reverend Lennox, I can confirm that the numbers continue to increase. It remains a real central pillar to our work. The priorities are about trying to meet needs much closer to home. And closer to home also means in Northumberland rather than out of county, where we can do that much better, I believe. We know that SEMH and autism are our two largest cohorts, particularly around increasing education healthcare plans. We are not seeing any decrease or any slowing down of that rate of increase over the years. So I think this will be a theme for some while to come. Our priorities as a team are set out till 2024, and I fully expect that when we look at 2024, which isn't that far away now, we will continue to have this as a key priority moving forward, and we must always, in the work that Sue's team do around build and investment and capital, we must always include the inclusive education within that, so that whilst we're considering particularly Atkinson, we're moving away from the single gender model moving forward. It will be co-ed. But actually we also want to see that in terms of our nurture group work in primary moving forward, and to really try and accelerate the work to do this as preventative rather than necessarily accepting that year-on-year increase.
And I think it would be fair to add as well that this is because schools are now absolutely at the forefront of identifying our young people. So those educational healthcare plans, which are very detailed and comprehensive, which identify and at a very early stage our young people, because actually the earlier we have identification of young people, the better the life chances for them to be able to get through that inclusive or supportive education if they need to. So I think it's a huge compliment to our staff and our education network that we're actually able to identify this. So I've got Councillor Carr who also wants to come in as well.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment about perception. Many years ago, special education needs were seen different, and it's years and years down the line we've now changed, and we recognise these children, need these special education needs facilities and services upgraded. When I mentioned perception, Atkinson House was always, I believed, when I was younger, tucked in the corner away. You have to drive down Seghill, a long road past the Blake Arms pub to reach it, and it's sort of located in like a mini industrial estate. I'm happy to see that we're now going to move these children to an actual school rather than a house, where these children will be recognised and seen publicly in a school. Thank you.
If I can just pick up something, because obviously, this is a request to move to a formal consultation. So I just want to pick up something which is on page 75, and it's the response of Ponteland Town Council. What it says is the council, are not averse to the relocation of Atkinson House, but they think it should be somewhere else in Ponteland. And it also references other places like Hexham or Kirkley Hall. So have we looked into this? Belt and braces, just so that we, have a very clear line, because we're moving, the recommendation is to move to an existing site and modify it. But the town council here is saying, please pop it somewhere else in Ponteland. I don't know, maybe Darras Hall, somewhere like that. Tell me, what's the answer?
Obviously, the site assessment of Ponteland means that there isn't any other alternative sites in Ponteland. The suggestion of Kirkley Hall, again, that's not in the ownership of the local authority, and therefore that would be a protracted agreement taking many years to enable investment on a site that doesn't actually belong to us. In terms of Hexham, I think the suggested site was the vacant site of Hexham Middle School. Again, that is a grade 2 listed building, very difficult to adapt for children with special educational needs. It is in the very, very far west of the county, and picking up Councillor Ball's comment, there would be a lot more significant travel distance if we were moving all of these children all the way to Hexham.
So in effect, the answer to that question is, we've looked at this, it's the best site, and it's not just something we've plucked out the air for the sake of it. It's had a very clear diligence around that site. Okay, that's fine. Do we have, right, Mr. Sanderson, sorry, I missed you there.
It's all right, I've just put my hand up. Just one thought. I think one of the key concerns of people who live in the area is the nature of the young people concerned with Atkinson House. So special needs is becoming increasingly more complex. Ponteland clearly provides a good education for people outside of Ponteland, because that's where an awful lot of them come. It's great to hear that we're going to make better provision for young people within Northumberland. But there needs to be, I think there needs to be some awareness campaign about these young people. I mean, a couple of the comments the councillor's already said about one of the comments of the young person. Another one that popped out to me was the fact that some of the younger students, they don't want girls, they just like it with just boys. And some of them don't really want to move. So these young people are really quite vulnerable. And I think some kind of awareness needs to go on. I know anecdotally that parents choose to send their children out of county, because my wife now works in a private school. Private schools very often cater for young people who can't cope in mainstream schools. Some of them come from Northumberland. She works in Newcastle. This is an opportunity. If we get it right, if we can spread understanding of the nature and the needs of these young people, it can be a great provision for people who live, probably some of them who live within Northumberland, to cater for their children. So I think some kind of awareness raising of the nature of young people, because Atkinson House, as Councillor's just mentioned, tucked away in Seg Hill on an industrial site. What kind of place is that? Well, you know what? It's a school and it caters for vulnerable people. And I think we need to consciously, conversation by conversation, meeting by meeting, we need to emphasise that these young people are vulnerable and need educating.
I think that's a very valid point. It's a bit of a myth busting, but it's also an opportunity, I think, for the school and the students, providing we meet all of the safeguarding requirements, to maybe do something about, you know, real people, real students, real life, real world. You know, I think it's a very good opportunity for us to perhaps look into that, and if perhaps we could look at working with the school to get a bit of that myth busting, and you know, we're not the scum of the earth, which I think has been some of the comments which have been put in there. We're real young people who actually want a job in the future. Audrey Kingham.
Thank you, Chair. Just to provide some reassurance to the Scrutiny group, we have had those discussions with the board at Atkinson House, particularly around changing the narrative, and that needs to come from within the school as well as the community and broader education suite. So there will be, as well as that formal consultation work with buildings, with key partners, should this move ahead, there will be a large piece of work which is around, I think I would take the view around perception. I think Councillor Dunn talked about perception, and ensuring that the language used and the way that the facility is described and the way that everyone behaves, that those expectations are set out really clearly, and that needs to sit alongside all of the work that everyone's talked around, particularly site safeguarding and traffic. It is of equal importance.
Excellent. Any other? Oh, right, so, Ms. Horton, there you go.
Hi, yeah, I was just going to echo what Audrey and John have been saying. As someone who's lived in Blythe all of our life, it is the perception of the local community of what Atkinson House is, that it's a naughty boys' school. And that is absolutely not the case. There are children who are very vulnerable. Some have complex needs that need to be addressed, and they're entitled to an education that's as valuable as anybody else's. And as you were saying about moving them to a co-educational setting, it gets them ready for the real world as well, that life is not just in a bubble of males. It is, you do have to mix with the different genders, and to get the life skills as well that are needed to be well-rounded citizens. They are not a unique group of students. They are students within Northumberland who are entitled to exactly the same as everybody else to be well-rounded citizens. And there is, I do feel we do need to change that perception. I remember when there was the Wellesley School, where it's now a housing site, and again that was where naughty boys went, and again it's changing how people perceive children with social education and mental health issues, that they just need that little bit of extra nurturing, and if we can change that perception, it would be really, really welcomed.
Very valid points there. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands wishing to speak. So we have an action that we need to achieve from this agenda item, which is that our comments are put forward to Cabinet for the 11th of January, and Cabinet will then make a decision whether it moves to a formal consultation. on this. So I think what we will have done is we will have captured the comments from this morning, which is predominantly supportive. Some concerns about transport, which I think we have addressed, but nevertheless we'll pick up. And obviously what Paul Rickard has mentioned in terms of that element around, is it possible to look at a bit of pre-work ahead of going to a formal consultation? And again, Guy Renner-Thompson will pick that up, I'm sure, at the Cabinet meeting and discuss with colleagues. So I think the overall consensus of the meeting is that we are supportive of a move to a formal consultation on the move of Atkinson House. I'm seeing a lot of nodding here. So on that basis, if members are happy, then that will be the basis on which we present our comments to Cabinet on the 11th of January. Yeah, just tapping. Yeah, that looks great. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, Chair. Just
Councillor
say
Dodd.
that I will be watching this at the next stage. You know, I'm familiar with the pre-consultation and then the consultation. This has just been what I'd call laying out a possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
This will now become to the probable, and that's where the devil or whatever is in the detail. And I will be watching that. Thank you.
And I would assume as well that local members would be involved in this process. So I think there'll be an assurance there for you, Richard, that you'll be able to make sure that your views are put in there. Right, okay, so thank you very much for that. We're now moving on to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the National Funding Formula 22 to 23 schools funding, which I think, Sue, you're going to take, and David, you're going to chip in as well. So, Sue, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you. Yes, the report is an annual one that we bring forward to FACS and Cabinet to approve a delegated decision for our Director of Adults and Children's Services and lead member for Children's Services due to the timescales of releasing the funding formula. Therefore, we're requesting a delegated decision around the funding formula values. But just talking through some of the key issues through the report, as committee will have heard many times before, it remains the intention of the Department of Education to move forward to a national funding formula. And earlier this year, the DfE consulted again on the final reforms to implement. The closing date of that consultation was the 30th of September, but the outcomes have not yet been published, so we have no firm fixed date in terms of the implementation. So again, as within previous years, local authorities will continue to have some local discretion over their schools funding formula within the parameters determined by the DfE for our 22-23 funding allocations. Again, we have been moving probably over the last 4 or 5 years towards national funding formula values in Northumberland, and our final 3 factors, we agreed last year that we would move in a 2-phased approach, implementing then the full national funding formula in Northumberland. The 2-step approach agreed last year meant that the 2 values that were significant, that we had 2 values, significantly over, which was primary and key stage 4 pupil-related unit funding formula, and the funding that was under-allocated was the primary prior lower attainment. Therefore, the national funding formula gap has closed in it 2 equal steps, and therefore the table on page 2 of the report demonstrates how we will implement that for 22-23, and the new allocations have also been added into that. So early indications, because we did receive our funding allocation, I think, on the 22nd of December, and the team are currently working through the implications, that we will be able to move our last 3 remaining factors to the level nationally. So therefore it would see in the region of an increase in the primary ARPU of £63 a pupil. Key stage 4 ARPU will receive an additional £48 per pupil, and the primary lower attainment, it'll mean an additional £290 per pupil. However, this is still subject to the detailed funding work going on in the background. Other key formula values that differ slightly in Northumberland is the free school meals ever 6. Again, this is something that Northumberland didn't use until 2 years ago, so we're on a steady trend towards the national level, and we'll continue to do that this year if funding allows. We do have provisional allocations for 22-23. They were shown in the table on page 3 of the report. And again, these figures are indicative and based on the October 2020 pupil numbers. And again, the pupil numbers in Northumberland have fallen slightly since October 2020. So the final settlement is likely to be lower overall. But again, the actual value is being delegated to lead member and exec director. At the time of drafting the report, I think the final dedicated schools grant figures were not released, and therefore the report is based on provisional numbers that you've seen. So the numbers that you see within the report are not the ones that the schools themselves will get. Just some of the key issues moving on. Again, we are proposing, with the support of Schools Forum, that Cabinet are recommended to approve up to a 0.5% transfer from the schools block to the high needs block, again to support the funding of additional specialist places that we've already talked about this morning, as well as services to support the increasing numbers of pupils with additional needs. So this will be the 3rd year that our Schools Forum have supported that additional funding moving into special educational needs. Schools Forum also supported to look at introducing a mobility factor. So this is when children move around the county, that the funding would actually follow the child, which isn't always the case. They also supported the use of capping and scaling. So this would ensure the affordability and a smoother transition to the national funding formula. So there'll be a limit on the winners and losers, so there is more smooth a transition. They also agreed to use a 2% minimum funding guarantee, giving the largest amount of funding per pupil increases to all schools across Northumberland. And we have struggled with some of our individual school budgets, particularly where we've been transitioning as a result of school reorganisation and as a result of falling birth rate. And so they want us to look at the use of the Falling Rolls Fund, again, to provide some stability for some of our small rural schools. So as these principles were agreed with Schools Forum, they were used then to consult all schools in Northumberland. The consultation was carried out with all schools between the 24th of November and the 13th of December. As is usual with this consultation, responses are usually very low. I think I've sat here in the past and said we've had 1 or 2 responses. Well, this year we actually got 6 responses to the consultation within the period. And again, although this number is low, it's higher than it has been for the last couple of years, and may just reflect agreement with the approach agreed in consultation with Schools Forum. So, as can be asserted from the results contained in paragraph 15 of the report, there was clear support for the Schools Forum decision to all of the questions from those who did respond to the consultation, and therefore it's on that basis that we will move forward with the recommendations to implement the funding formula for 22-23. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. David, did you want to come in at all? David Street, Deputy Director of Education? No, that's fine. Guy Renner-Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very thorough report, as usual, from Sue there. 2 things I'd like to say. First of all, we continue to follow the recommendations of Schools Forum and continue to value that as a body. It brings together different people from across the sectors in the county, and is a very worthwhile thing. Also, I'd like to congratulate, ourselves really, a bit of a pat on the back. We lobbied the government for a change in sparsity funding, which now means that it's calculated by road distance as opposed to as the crow flies. We were successful in that lobbying, and that is why we've seen an increase in that funding. It shows particularly in the index at the rear, when you look at the names of the schools on page 141 that have seen the biggest increases, look at the names, they are our remote rural schools. So they have seen a benefit from that. Thank you.
And you're missing the other one, Guy, which is we managed to lobby for a change to reflect that we still have high schools in Northumberland. So that funding formula was changed on that as well. So that's good. Before anybody else has a comment, can I just move to page 125 of the report? And obviously this is the feedback questions which went out to those 6 respondents. And it says, do you agree to the proposal that the establishment of a falling roles fund should be investigated? Is it being pursued?
Yes, yeah, we're currently investigating if we get enough funding that we look to implement that in a small way. It only affects a very small number of schools, but it would really help those small schools, yeah.
It'd be good if we can be kept in the loop on that, because that's a really important fund, and I think that would address a lot of the concerns of our very small schools about their sustainability moving forward. Yeah. Do we have any other comments, observations? I'm not seeing any. So, right, we've noted that, and the comments are that I think it's marvellous. There we are. You can feed that back. Right, and now we're moving on to item number 8 on the agenda, which is the work programme. And Chris Angus, you're going to take us through that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, members might be aware that we'd split January into 2 meetings because of the...
Can you move your mic?
Sorry. Yeah, we split January into 2 meetings because of the volume of work that was on the agenda for January. It's been agreed to cancel the 13th of January meeting because some of those reports have been deferred and move them into February, sorry. So the next meeting will be on the 1st of Feb, where there'll be a report going to Cabinet on this school admissions arrangement. This is again just an annual report that comes every year to FACS. And then to Cabinet, but it would mean that there's a large number of items on the agenda for February. So I had a conversation with Councillor Daly this morning, and we thought about moving the time of FACS to 9 o'clock on the 1st of February and holding it for as long as needed to get through the items on the agenda, rather than having 2 meetings again in February or in March.
And Chris has promised he will provide teas and coffees for us. Is that right? I'm sure we'll sort that out just to keep us going. Right. Are there any other things to add on to that work programme? Okay. That's fine.
Have we agreed that, Chair?
Sorry?
Have we agreed that just for the...
For the teas and coffees?
Well, just that way.
Yes. So we are, sorry, we are, there was a nod of agreement. I saw people getting their diaries out. So we will move to 9 o'clock start on the 1st. Yeah? February. 3rd, sorry. It was the 3rd, wasn't it, Chris? It is, sorry. It's the 3rd, sorry. Yeah. Oh, you're all in fine form this morning. 3rd of February at 9 o'clock. And I say Chris is bringing the cakes and hot drinks. So, I am now moving on to item number 9, urgent business. I have not been informed of any. If anybody has anything as urgent from the floor, I'm not seeing that. So on that basis, thank you very much for your attendance this morning. Been a very good meeting. Again, Happy New Year and a safe one. And thank you for attending. Thank you.